and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo visits Plateau State following deadly attacks on 3 local government areas of the state. Police deploy special team to troubled areas in Plateau, where no fewer than 80 people were killed on Sunday. President Muhammadu Buhari asked Niger Delta leaders to persuade militants to shun destruction of national assets and give peace a chance. And Turkey's long-standing leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan wins new 5-year term after securing outright victory in first round of presidential poll.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo meets President Enabling Business Environment Council over sanctions for non-compliance of executive order.
On sports news, 45-year-old Egypt goalkeeper Samuel Hadjiri becomes the oldest player to feature at the FIFA World Cup, even as Portugal and Spain survived the group phase.
And from Abuja, court grants bail to 4 members of the indigenous people of Biafra charged with treasonable felony alongside leader of the group, Nnamdi Kanu.
We begin tonight with the Vice President's condolence visit to Plateau State to commiserate with the people and the government of the state following Sunday's attack that claimed no fewer than 86 lives. The Vice President arrived at the Yakubu Gowon airport this evening and was received by the state governor and other government officials. He thereafter went into a meeting with community leaders of different ethnic groups in the state, where he asked them to ensure that peace reigns in their domain through constant dialogue and effective communication. The Vice President condemned the attack and also asked security agencies in the state to track down the perpetrators of the killings. The attacks were carried out in the early hours of Sunday in 3 local government areas of Riom, Barkinladi and Jos South.
It is the responsibility of each and every one of us, especially leadership, the leadership of the communities, to ensure that we're able to bring about a situation of lasting peace. You know, no matter who, in the end, will be held responsible for some of these activities. I think we must ensure that we don't allow a situation where anybody gets away with this sort of killings. We have been, in the particular case of this local government, we are told that herdsmen attacked the village. You know, we don't know what exactly the reasons were, but this is what we're told. So it's a condemnable act. It is completely without. There's no reason whatsoever for killing any Nigerian. No reason for killing anybody. Whatever even in law, you're not even allowed to. Even if a killing has taken place, you're not even allowed to kill in return. If you do, it is as criminal as the very first act itself. And I want to say that this is an act that is condemned, and I certainly believe that unless we seize the moment to ensure that this is not allowed to continue, you know, we may have greater problems on our hands. We must not allow in this country a religious crisis that becomes intractable, that becomes uncontrollable. And if these sort of things continue to happen, we will have the kind of crisis that no country in the world has ever survived from, the religious crisis.
In the meantime, the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, has deployed a police special intervention force to Plateau State to restore peace in the affected local government areas. The intervention force, headed by the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Department of Operations, is to coordinate and supervise operations on the ground with the ultimate aim of ending the crisis. According to a police statement, the IGP has also directed the Commissioner of Police in charge of the monitoring unit to lead the police special investigation team to affected areas and other flashpoints in Plateau State. The team is to carry out a thorough and discreet investigation into the killings and properly apprehend those responsible. Elsewhere, less than 24 hours after suspected herdsmen allegedly attacked Dowaya village in Demsa local government area of Adamawa State, troops of the 23 Brigade of the Nigerian Army in Yola have arrested 5 persons for setting a Fulani settlement ablaze. The suspects were believed to be carrying out a reprisal attack following Friday night's raid on Dowaya village by gunmen suspected to be herdsmen where 21 persons were murdered. According to a colonel with the 23 Brigade in Yola, suspects were sighted setting Dakali village ablaze, a Fulani community. Items recovered from them include one local pistol, one locally made pistol, a knife, 4 handsets, and one empty 10-litre jerrycan, among other items. The 5 suspects have been handed over to the Adamawa State Police Command, Yola, for further investigation. In the meantime, the Christian Association of Nigeria is shocked by the spate of killings in Plateau State by men suspected to be herdsmen. The association says it's sad that despite assurances and promises by President Muhammadu Buhari that his government is committed to the safety of lives and property, these coordinated and premeditated attacks on Plateau towns and other cities continue to be a regular thing. C.A.N is also worried about how scores of people can be killed without any form of resistance by soldiers deployed to contain the security challenge. The association is therefore calling on the federal government not to rest on its oars until the perpetrators are brought to book. From the beginning of 2018, Plateau State has witnessed a series of attacks which has claimed more than 500 lives. This situation is made worse by what appears to be the seeming inability of security agencies to apprehend those behind the attacks. In this report, our correspondent Oluwa Shonibare looks at the security challenges facing Plateau State.
There are 2 kinds of people watching this right now. Those who are appalled by the sight of mayhem, death and destruction, and those who encourage it. Over 500 people are reported to have been killed in Plateau State in 2018, a situation which has been met with government visits and condemnation without any solution on how to stop the killings. With all the manpower at the disposal of the federal government to put an end to this, it is surprising the ease with which killers invade communities and wipe out families. Men, women, children. This latest attack, where 86 people are reported to have been killed, raises questions on the ability of the security apparatus to protect lives. It cannot be that there is no answer on how to put a stop to this. It only takes conscience and willpower. Because the establishment of Plateau State in 1976 by the then head of state Murtala Muhammad must have been for the prosperity and unity of the nation. Oluwa Shonibare, Channels Television News.
More reactions to the Plateau killings, this time from the Deputy Senate President, and he's scared that the killings may continue if nothing is done immediately to stop them. Senator Ike Ekweremadu is now calling for a new strategy to tackle the crisis and wants the government to take proactive actions.
Well, this is really unfortunate. It means that our country is a nation where the leaders have refused to learn from the mistakes or missteps we have taken in the past. For many months and years now, some of us have been consistent about the need to decentralize our security architecture. And so long as we're not doing that, we're going to get this kind of result. It pains me that innocent people who have voted us into power to protect them and their properties losing their lives and those properties because of refused to take the correct steps. The sad news is that not only that some people have died, but more will also die unless we do the correct thing. Because there's no way we can have a federation such as Nigeria, as big as it is, with all the diversities, and they continue to do a centralized police and expect it to work. So that is the major problem. So it's also sad that this is happening, and my heart grieves for those who lost their dear ones. But as I said, the tragedy is that this is not going to be the last. More will die, because we refuse to do the correct thing. So I want to call on the federal government, the leaders of this country, for us to, for once, decide, to protect the lives and properties of those who are leading, because that's the primary purpose of government. And the only way.
And joining me to discuss the state of affairs in Plateau is a security consultant who served in the U.S. military as a counter-IED intelligence analyst, Tamwa Ashiru. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10. And before we say anything, of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and everyone in Plateau State who's suffering at this time. How does this sort of invasion happen? It continues, and then until scores and scores of people are dead without any reply from security agencies.
Well, if we understand the makeup of Plateau State, it's a very diverse state. I believe I recently read that there are about 40 different ethnic groups that are co-located there. Now, the unfortunate thing has been the skewed reporting. When we read about this particular situation, we saw that it started off with some Berum youth who attacked or rustled cows or cattle and also killed about 4 Fulani men. Now, that's the allegation in terms of the homicide. And as a result of that, there was a reprisal attack. Now, we didn't hear about the initial incident that occurred. And so what we have to do is then figure out what is that problem in between. The problem is the inability for the security agencies to find the people who perpetrated that first act and nip it in the bud. And because the Fulani people who were attacked realized that, look, if you're not going to help us find the people who are rustling our cattle, we're going to take matters into our own hands. And that's how we got to this point.
But that's how we got to this particular point. But in terms of improving the way we gather intelligence, looking at the way the attacks happen, it appears premeditated, it's coordinated, it's carried out for a long period of time. It's not like a flash attack, come and go. So why is it that we're always reacting to it?
Reacting. Now that's the issue, and that's the issue we've always talked about with regards to the way we approach security in Nigeria. It tends to be very reactive. There's a lot of other things that we could have done prior to, things like early warning. So the moment we saw or heard that this incident occurred, the security structure within the state, the local communities, the leaders of the communities, the traditional leaders in the communities, they should have immediately stepped in, reassured everyone, and done everything they could to try to figure out who perpetrated this attack so that you don't get those reprisal attacks. So we tend to be very reactive. And in our reaction, it's about calling in the forces. Or let's call in the heavy hands, let's call in the guns, let's call in the military and the police. And that's not always the way forward. You have to call in the elders, you have to call in people. There must be dialogue to sit down and make sure that it doesn't go to the next level.
We've seen several attempts at calling in elders. We've also seen military exercises, military operation in some cases, special, police force, anti-bomb squad, etc. But then you find the attackers still coming. They're still able to raise down whole villages in some instances. What sort of approach, coordinated approach, do you think the security agencies need?
There must be constant surveillance, and there must be a flow of information between the locals and the security forces in the area. Now, if you ask me, when such things happen, I tend to question what the level of security forces that are in that immediate community. Why? The incident supposedly happened around 1 o'clock and happened until 7 or 8, and such. That's what the reports were saying. So for about 7 hours, a massacre is going on and nobody responded. So in this particular situation, we're looking at the need for there to be constant surveillance, constant reconnaissance by the security forces to know in what direction people are going, and early warning signals to go ahead and act before things get really bad.
Okay, my final question now. Some people have said that we perhaps need international help, stronger help than we have already. What would you say to that? Seeing as it's also, we also hear from one security analyst after the other that the military is overstretched. What sort of help do you think we need from outside? Well,
the last time this happened, there was actually a lot of collaboration and a lot of help that came in, both from the international NGOs and also even other non-profit organizations that have to do with conflict resolution. So we had a lot of collaboration that happened that brought the peace to the state. But I believe it's not necessarily international. I think that we need to really localize policing. If you're looking at a state that has multiple people that live in there and they're very different, why would you bring outside methods of policing into that community? You have to figure out how to localize it, and that's the best way forward. All right, security analyst Tamwa Ashiru, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you. Thanks. And in part 2, after the break, Lagos High Court remands female lawyer Udeme Otike Obidu in prison for allegedly killing her 50-year-old husband. That's in a moment. Please stay.